Heal Me by Embrace the Insectric on AO3, Chapter 17. So, they were really trying to recruit you. Izuku thanked Principal Nezu for the cup of tea that he was handed. As he nodded his head, he blew on the tea to cool it down before taking a sip, looking over the rim of the cup as he did so to the pros who had assembled around him in Nezu's office. He was sat on one of the couches with Toshinori hovering protectively beside him. Nezu took a seat on the couch across from him between Recovery Girl and Midnight. Aizawa was pacing the room, alleged and impatient, as Present Mike watched him from his spot, leaning against Nezu's desk. Everyone was either still dressed in clothes they slept in or wore hastily thrown on suit jackets and dress shirts. When Izuku had called Yue and had been able to report that he was safe, it had apparently interrupted a whirlwind of development search parties and preparations for meetings with representatives from both the Hero Public Safety Commission and Island to discuss next steps. Everything had been halted to prioritize recovering him and getting him back to UA to debrief. In the beginning, at least, Izuku answered properly, lowering his cup of tea. I think that was their plan, A, and when it quickly became apparent that I wasn't interested, they then switched to plan B. He raised his arm for an unprompted of time that morning, showing off his new patch of damage that he had been added to the collection of his arms. The reflected decay that had stripped away the flesh of his forearm had mostly healed over, especially once he had given proper food upon his return to campus. It still looked gloss over and irritated, and it would most definitely scar, but it no longer stung to move his arm, and he was able to take the bandages off. They hurt you? Toshinori mumbled, pain and fatigue in his voice. Indirectly, Izuku clarified. Shigaraki used his quirk on one of the other members of the league to test if I would be willing to heal a villain given acquit motivation. You're a healer, Recovery Girl assured. It's instinct for you to help, no matter the person. All of this still does not explain how you managed to get away from them, Present Mike acknowledged. No. Aizawa stopped pacing and turned to pin Izuku with an accusatory stare, his tone much harsher than his husband's. No, it doesn't. I told you, Midoriya maintained, sticking with the story he had been telling ever since he'd been able to call Yue and share that he was safe. I escaped on my own. You really expect us to believe that? Aizawa asked, shrugging away the calm hand that Present Mike tried to place on his shoulders. What else is there to believe? Izuku challenged. You had to have help, the teacher accused, shaking his head. Whether it was from the students or something else, I don't know, but there's no way you... That's fine if you don't believe my story. But do you have any evidence to the contrary? Aizawa paused and looked around the room to his few colleagues, silently questioning if any of them had anything to add to the discussion. It wasn't as if anyone else in the room genuinely believed that Izuku escaped on his own. It was just they really didn't have any other answer. A wellness visit did confirm Katsuki Bakugou and Shouta Todoroki to be staying at the Todoroki residency, under the supervision of Toyomi Todoroki. Midnight reported, mouth twisting in an apologetic smile for not helping Aizawa's argument, and every other student still on campus, well accounted for. Then it had to be something else, Aizawa resorted, unwillingly to let the matter settle. Tell me something, Izuku requested, calmly setting his cup of tea down on the coffee table in front of him in favor of holding his hands neatly in his lap. He let his expression grow naturally and detached, the same look he had been given witness on their face countless of researchers who had to make their case for fundings or project approval in front of panels or corporation authorities. It was the face of someone looking to make a deal. Have there been any recent report incidents on par with Kaminari? Any fights between UA students and villains for the public to witness? The faculty glanced at one another, looking around to see if anyone had heard anything and hadn't been able to share it yet. Midnight had already confirmed that every student was accounted for, and Izuku knew that the only thing they would have Any chance of being reported by the point would be unconnected and irrelevant warehouse fire in another district. Aizawa shook his head again, frowning in response to the silence in the room. There hadn't been, but we can't just ignore. And did you need to make a press statement like last time? Izuku asked, already aware of what their answer would be. Is there anyone aside from Class 2A and a few members of the UA faculty who even know I'd been taken? The press release would have been slaughtered for this morning, but now with his return... Nezu trailed off and looked at Toshinori. What about his mother? Izuku felt Toshinori tense beside him, and he glanced over. The formal hero looked guilty and apologetic. I was going to tell her eventually. Toshinori! Nezu chipped as Izuku tried to suppress his laughter. Why don't you try telling Inko Midoriya that her son was kidnapped and see if she lets you go unscathed? We're off topic. Midnight called for order, snapping her fingers to get everyone's attention to be silent. She turned back to Izuku, gaze cautious and careful. What exactly are you trying to argue here? I was gone, and now I'm back, Izuku stated simply. Safe, and for the most part unharmed. The villains gained nothing, and the heroes lost nothing. He picked up his cup of tea and shrugged. And no one needs to know if it even happened. The adults felt silent, processing and considering his suggestions. Izuku knew that everyone in the room understood the offer he was trying to make without him having to outline it word per word. Losing Katsuki had scared UA's already fragile reputation with the public. Consistent with Target's villain attack and recruited in double over whether or not they were capable of keeping their students safe. If word got out that yet another student had been kidnapped, one who wasn't even technically a UA student, there would be an uproar. Not to mention, criticism wouldn't just be from the general public, but also from the very protective and very influential researchers on Island, and Izuku would be pulled from his internship and dropped back inside the secure walls of the floating island. It had been hard enough getting his instructors and sponsors to agree to let their little project leave the island in the first place. You do realize that you're suggesting a cover-up, right? Might asked, particularly as a way of breaking the silence since everyone else seemed to be at a loss for what to say. Yes. Great, just checking, the hero said with a nod as he absent-mindedly twisted a long strand of his blonde hair around his fingers. Cover-ups are an option. Hisashi. Aizawa grounded out, a warning edge to his voice. Shouto? President Mike replied in a fondly mocking reception of his voice. Izuku briefly wondered if he was getting a glimpse into his future with Katsuki. The kid has a point. We know that it happened, Aizawa argued, swinging back into the debate. We can't let the villains believe that they just can get away with kidnapping students, and we can't let our own students think they can deal with villains on their own. If you really want to punish someone, then punish me for being a smartass and not giving you straight answers, Izuku challenged. Another beat of silence passed. Izuku held his tongue, knowing he had already pushed his luck numerous times in the past last hour. He was a child bickering with teachers, with professional heroes, as if he were anywhere near the level of authority. He knew it was foolish, but at this point, the only plan he could see the most benefiting it was where all the blame and attention was placed on him. 2-week suspension, President Nezu finally sentenced. Izuku let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Less for the kidnapping and more for being out late with a student after curfew. Hisoshi Shinsho has already received a similar punishment, so it's only fair. Hold on, suspension from what exactly? Recovery Girl questioned. His course studies are still conducted by Island instructors, and therefore at their discretion. As far as his internship with me goes, removing a healer does more harm than good. You will be escorted directly from school grounds to Toshinori's home, and vice versa. President Nezu clarified. Toshinori nodded in agreement with the coordinations. There will be no social interaction with other students beyond your duties as a healer. Izuku winced, realizing that the student interactions would likely include any interactions with Katsuki. However, the sentence was probably the lightest he'll get, and he wasn't about to start fighting for any loopholes that could allow him to see his boyfriend. Is that all? I'm contemplating one thing, Recovery Girl said. It's something your Island's instructor had recommended as protocol measures when we were outlining the terms of your internship. We had considered it an excessive amount, but now I'm not so sure. Izuku felt his heart sink. Though he made an effort to keep his expression neutral, he knew what the measure she was talking about because he had fought hard to keep it out of his contract. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and nodded. The tracker. I'm sorry, the what? Aizawa asked. Having not been involved with any precautions innovations for Izuku's internship, Izuku opened his eyes and glanced over, nearly smiling when he saw an insidious look on his teacher's face. A microchip implant that can be used to track my location, Izuku told him, and some of my vitals. Island developed functional prototypes, but they haven't really announced that to the general public. Aizawa stared at him for a moment, as if wanting Izuku to change his answer. When it was clear that that was all he was getting, he shifted his look of disbelief and directed it towards the recovery girl instead. He's not a pet, he pointed out, as if the obvious needed to be stated. You can't be serious. It would be for protection, Toshinori murmured, and Izuku winced. He felt betrayed, but he couldn't blame Toshinori for considering the option if it meant that the retired hero wouldn't lose him again. He had always been excessively protective ever since Izuku nearly died trying healing him. Honestly, he couldn't blame any of them. It seemed harsh to an outsider, sure, but it wasn't anything he wasn't used to. His quirk was rare and could control over it was even rarer. The potential impact he would make on the hero industry and general society wasn't something to ignore. He had only hoped that finally leaving Island, even temporarily, would mean just a little bit more freedom. Not this. It's invasive, Aizawa growled, his shocking expression shifting one filled with rage. There's no denying his quirk is a valuable resource to us, especially considering how much control he has over it at such a young age, Recovery Girl reminded him. In fact, that the villains acted so quickly to seize him stands testament to that. He's not a resource. He's a child. The room fell silent as Aizawa's outburst, some nearly flinching. The teacher sighed and shook his head, calming only slightly as he let out the tension atmosphere of the room simmer for a moment. A child who has been through enough, as it is. Izuku would guess that Aizawa was referring more than just the kidnapping the last part of his argument. He had seen the scars on Izuku's arms, heard the explanations of how they got there. Others had seen the scars and heard general stories and pieced together their own thoughts of the matter, but Aizawa was different. He had the nurturing instinct of a proper guardian, a side effect of training class A and looking after Eri. Izuku may have been an outsider, but the fact that his class has incorporated him as one of their own meant that Aizawa's protection spear had fallen over him as well. On that matter, I do agree. Nezu finally settled, a touch of pride in his voice, as if he had already had a long sentence coming in to decide to reject the tractor idea, but had only waited for someone else to voice disapproval. Izuku figured it only makes sense considering Nezu himself had been a subject to experiments for years, and likely wouldn't support something so invasive. A tractor is not the way to go here. Izuku let out a breath and nodded his head towards the principal in thanks. Out of the corner of his eyes, he noted that Aizawa seemed significantly calmer now that the idea had been rejected, and was now allowing present Mike to place a comforting hand on his back. "Thank you," Izuku murmured, his gratitude directed towards both the principal and the teacher. However, the matter of his protection is still something that needs to be addressed, Nezu maintained. "I have support gear," Izuku quickly shared, mind racing as she shuffled through the mental catalog of defense weapons. "Stuff I've designed, but I'm not allowed to use in public because I'm not a licensed hero." "We can work on getting you a provisional license," Aizawa offered, much more in favor of this new plan. "My class got theirs at first year, so wouldn't be a problem." "Do you believe you're equipped to pass the exam?" Recovery Girl questioned. "Your quirk isn't exactly suited for—" "I have significant combat training, a mind for strategy, and top-of-the-line support items that I'm more than comfortable using if that's what you have to worry about," Izuku quickly listed, confident in his defense. Recovery Girl and many others really only knew about his healing quirk, and he was more than happy to demonstrate what else he had to offer. "With all due respect, I thought you'd know better than anyone that us healers are a little more than just walking first aid kits." "You are an interesting one, aren't you?" Nezu murmured, as Recovery Girl laughed at that quip. "I'll contact the Hero Public Safety Commission to request a private exam. I'll have it scheduled as soon as possible so they won't give you much time to prepare." "Not a problem," Izuku confirmed with a nod in his head. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet," Nezu told him. "Until you're legally able to carry and use support gear, I will be requesting the licensed hero accompanying you at all times outside of the walls of UA for protection, even after your suspension is over." "I'm certain Lemillion would be honored to take the role of protecting what he needs," Toshinori suggested, likely believing that Izuku would be best protected by the inheritor of All for One. "Toogata has his work to do," Izuku reminded him. "He can't spend all of his time looking after me." "We'll piece together a schedule," Midnight offered, with an endearing smile. "We're in no short supply of heroes here on campus who would be happy to spend some extra time with Midoriya until he gets his license." "Hell yeah!" Present Mind explained. "I'd totally be down for some sign language sessions with little listener." "I really don't want to be a burden," Izuku began to argue. "I'm not exactly worth all this." "Nonsense," Aizawa cut him off. "You've been a greater influence on the UA community than I think you'd realize. You're certainly someone whose most here would consider more than just extra protection." Izuku smiled and looked down at the cooling cup of tea in his hands, an embarrassing blush blooming on his cheeks from the praise and attention. The schedule of bodyguards may be a bit bothersome punishment, but perhaps it wouldn't be too bad. At the very least, he could interview whoever was watching over him to add more information in his hero analysis notes. As the faculty in the room began discussing potential rotations and good candidates for the job, a sudden thought occurred to Izuku, had him biting the inside of his cheek, trying to keep from smiling too wide. He wasn't sure if the idea would be accepted, and he didn't want to seem too excited about it. "In that case, you said a licensed hero, right?" Izuku asked, interrupting the teachers who all turned to look at him. Principal Nezu gave him a nod to confirm that the young healer couldn't help but twitch a smile that tugged at his lips in response. "Does it matter if that license happened to be provisionary?" I am glad that Aizawa and Nezu are really against the idea of a tracker. Right, All Might being for the idea is kind of a bummer, but I don't really care. Hot take, I really hate All Might. I don't like him. So, him being for the tracker just made me not like him more. Even though technically speaking, this isn't canon him, this is fanon him, but you know what? I don't care. I don't like him. I don't need logic for that. But yeah, I'm happy that he's not getting a tracker. And we have one more chapter left. Tomorrow is the last chapter. How are we feeling? I know I'm feeling whiplash because literally as I sat down to record this one, it's when it hit me. Oh, shit. I only got 2 left. So, I might as well just tell you what the fanfic is, the next series, because I haven't set up clues for you guys, and I don't know what would be a good clue. I'll just read you the tags. I'll read you the tags. I froze him. He's basically Nora Flies. No idea who Nora Flies is. Izuku is not happy with either of his brothers. Midoriya Izuku has a quirk. Midoriya Izuku does not have all for one quirk. BAMF Midoriya Izuku. Sassy Midoriya Izuku. Midoriya Izuku is a ray of sunshine. Genius Midoriya Izuku. No beta, we die like women. Yet, or maybe, I don't know truthfully. But waking up 200 years in the future makes him cranky. Midoriya Izuku has multiple quirks. Sensei all for one is Midoriya Hisashi, except his last name is Shigaraki. Formerly titled The Forgotten Musketeer. I changed it to a series. Sue me. So yeah, it is Izuku Shigaraki by Fangirl48. I am excited. I've never read it before, so I will be going through the journey with you guys of reading it for the first time. And I cannot wait to see you guys next week when we start it. And I can't wait to record it because I'm not going to be able to record it till Monday. Because I have another trip. Literally, I just came back from Vegas 2 days ago. And I'm going to another trip. And I have to prepare because I won't have time to record. Literally, I only have today and tomorrow to record for a week. So I'm struggling. But I just need a couple more videos to record and I will be fine. And I will be in the clear. So I think I'm gonna rock it all today, power through and then just record some additional ones just in case. You never know, I might come back and be absolutely like a zombie or something. But yeah, as always, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds, have a wonderful day or night. Join our community server, link is in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.